Journeys Ahead, Chapter 4, Cipher and Decode. As the sun slowly began to rise upon a new day for Aurora, Void stood within the broken open entryway of Nock's workshop. The sun glimmered over him as well as what remained of the mechanic's motorcycles. With his arms crossed, the spark closed his eyes and let the sun gently caress his head, all the while questioning his own decisions. What am I doing? He asked himself as the sound of a mourning dove chirped on ahead. All right, Captain, I'm ready to set sail, Jida announced from behind. Turning, Void set his gaze upon her, seeing that she was ready to go. The orange-haired guitarist wore the same clothes from earlier. A sweater was tied promptly around her waist, and a guitar was strapped upon her back. The only difference in appearance was that she now wore leather gloves with a greenish-blue strap holding them down. Her orange ponytail and bangs remained as such, and blew in the morning wind. Smirking, Jida eyed Void expectantly. Are you positive about this? The journey ahead will be very difficult. The multiversal being asked as Jida approached in a marching manner. Sir, yes, sir, she returned, giving a salute. Wincing with a confused gaze, the spark rose his mechanical hand up and then proceeded to lower Jida's salute, unsure of how to feel. You don't need to act like a soldier. I'm not your general. I'm your ally, Void explained, raising an eyebrow. Yes, sir. I mean, yeah, totally, dude. I gotcha. Jida replied with a smirk and slight turn, whilst putting both fists upon her hips. Shaking his head, Void turned and activated his portal opener, when at the same time, the sound of Nock's nasally voice boomed from the end of the workshop. Jida, wait! He cried. Turning, the musician watched and then flinched as the small mechanic leapt from the ground and tackled her into a hug. The two siblings per se then fell to the ground, leaving Void to turn and look in a confused state. Whoa, hey! Since when were you so lovey-dovey? Jida asked as Nock rose and adjusted his glasses. You better take care of yourself, he boasted as Jida rubbed his head in a comforting gesture. Nock, I'll be okay. I already promised you this, Jida reminded as she stood back to her feet. All the while, Void watched over his shoulder, growing somber in silence. Remember our promise. Never forget who you are underneath that damn hood, okay? Nock reminded the musician while crossing his arms. I haven't forgotten. I'll come back in one piece. Besides, I have this unit with me, Jida stated as she turned back to Void, who gazed upon the two of them with a look that screamed of sorrow. Void? Jida quickly asked, dropping her cheery attitude. Huh? Oh, sorry. We should get going. Turning back around, Void rose his hand and opened his palm, gesturing for Jida to take it. It'll take a few times before you get used to reality hopping. In the meantime, just hold on to me. Otherwise, you could end up in the wrong world. Oh, gotcha, she replied before gently laying her mitt within Void's, who then softly grasped in return. I'll make sure she stays safe, little buddy. You have my word. Void then said to Nock, who quietly nodded in return. I trust you, spaceman. Be warned, though, she can get a little crazy from time to time. Rolling her eyes, Jida scoffed, but smiled, before turning back to face the portal. At the same time, Void nodded and turned, the two now being ignited into a shiny blue hue. Ready? Void asked. Never been more ready in my life, Jida replied. Alright, hang on tight, because things are about to get a little... Before Void could finish, he leapt into the portal, taking Jida with him, who softly screamed but was silenced as she crossed through. Then, like nothing had been there, the portal snapped closed, leaving Nock alone in his destroyed workspace. Sighing with a shake in his head, Nock placed both his hands upon his hips before turning and looking around at the damage. God. Superpower stuff, alternative realities. You are always thrown into the middle of everything, huh? He said to himself with a smile before grabbing a broom off the wall. Maybe I should call Wobble, Bobble, and Ron. Ain't no way I'm going to be able to clean all this stuff up by myself. The mechanic finished as he then began to sweep up the mess. All by himself, at least for now. Opening her eyes, Jida couldn't help but gasp at what she was seeing. As the guitarist gripped upon Void's hand, she looked around and began to softly laugh with amazement as to what she was seeing. The two of them were going through what looked to be some kind of curvy blue wind tunnel. Round its form were the spinning shapes of multicolored stars that all swirled and danced as she and the spark phased through each one. The best way to describe it was like a long slide with a ring of lights around it. Outside the vortex, Jida could see it. Tons of swirling lines that looked to be branches or frozen in time splices of lightning, all connected and shimmering with many different colors. Clouds of stardust and rays of light glimmered across an ever-changing system that went from blue to purple and many other shades. Everything felt as though to be a massive rainbow in a way. So many different forms of life went as far as the eye could see. The multiverse, Jida whispered as they soared on ahead. Beautiful, right? Void asked quietly as they went from left to right and then up and down and zigzagging all around. I thought the subspace was something, but this is beyond anything I could have ever imagined. Jida exclaimed, turning to Void, who gazed back with a gentle nod. As the two locked eyes, Jida's bewildered expression softened down into a more caring one. The look behind Void was one of a cracked wall. It looked like he wanted to spill so much, but held it all back. She had to ask, "Hey, you looked a little upset a few minutes ago. Something on your mind?" The musician questioned as her attention fully went from the spiraling universes around her vision to the person that had allowed her to tag along. "It's nothing much. It's your relationship with your brother. It just brought back memories of me and my own," Void revealed as the two spiraled around what looked to have been some kind of bioluminescent creature that shimmered between worlds. "You have a brother? I thought it was just you and your parents," Jida asked as she rose an eyebrow and spun between stars with the spark. His name was Core. He had moved away and was living on his own when the glitch attacked. He, like the rest of my world, was lost after it all transpired. Void elaborated to Jida's curiosity. "Listen, I know I've said this before, but please just stick by my side and be careful. You've got someone back home that cares about you. Remind yourself now and again that you have something to go back to once the fight is done. On this journey, let your heart carry you forward with every step and decision you make. Listen to it, and let it guide you. Trust its call, and you will survive." Void explained, catching the ears of Jida, who rationalized what he had meant. He was right. Nock was family, and if she wasn't careful, things could end badly. Not just for her, but for those she cared for. "Yes, sir," she returned in a somber tone, with Void nodding but shaking his head at the same time. "I said not... whatever," he said, looking to the side. "You know, for someone who I've caught short wind on making jokes in the heat of battle, you sure seem to know how to pull off some deep messages and stories, and I've only known you for less than a day," Jida stated whilst letting her free hand trickle past the moving stardust. "Well, humor is a good way to maintain focus. It drowns out fear and anger, helps me stay on track. However, when the time calls for it, such as now, I have 10 years worth of advice," Void replied, side-glancing and smiling at Jida. "Makes sense. Got any other words of advice you have up your sleeve, Master Kenobi?" Jida asked with a slight joking tone. "Not at the moment, but I do have a set of riddles if you wish to challenge your brain," Void answered as they continued to swirl across the endless sea of worlds. "Riddles? Really?" "Sure, why not?" Jida replied, raising an eyebrow. Nodding, Void gazed forward and began to guide the two of them in a different route, now nearing their destination. Alright, here's one. I speak without a mouth, and I hear without ears. I have no body, yet I come alive with the wind. What am I? Void asked, testing Jaida's smarts. Biting her lip, the musician began to think, before ultimately shrugging, unsure of what the answer was. Good question. I don't know. An echo. Void answered, his voice booming off the cylindrical vortex that surrounded them. Oh, okay, that was pretty good. Got any more? I bet I can get the next one. Jaida asked with a sense of determination. I'll give you one more for now. This one will be easier. What word is spelled wrong in the dictionary? Void asked as the two slowly swirled in sync, creating a trail of glimmering dust, the smoke trail behind them. Void, I'm from a different universe. For all I know, it could be literally anything. Jaida returned with an unamused face. Come on, don't think about it too hard. Void replied, giving a smug grin. Reaching her free hand up, Jaida scratched her chin in deep thought, before replying, Is it the word there? Because you can spell it in 3 different ways, I can get it wrong in 3 different ways, right? Jaida answered. First of all, that's actually a pretty valid answer. Second of all, wrong. The answer is wrong. Void revealed with a smile and shake in his head. What do you mean it's wrong? That doesn't make... Oh, okay, smartass. If you have more, I bet I'll get them right. Come on, lay more on me. Jaida retorted before sticking her tongue out. We'll see. Void stated with a stare of uncertainty. Alright, we're nearing our next destination. Hold on tight. The Spark mentioned as he quickly wrapped his arm around Jaida's, making sure they were held together to not split apart. Entering a new reality in 3, 2, 1. The Spark exclaimed to Jaida's excitement before a bright light took them hold. The vast sea of universes suddenly disappeared from view as a new surrounding began to take shape. All the while, Jaida was on the brink of losing her mind with excitement. Then, with 1 second passing, they phased through the portal and entered the next world. Oh man, a whole new reality! This is gonna be insane for me, dude. Like, this is a messy apartment room. Stepping out from the portal, both Void and Jaida took a few steps before they stood within the Spark's dingy little apartment room. The low light above buzzed with a small hum, while soft pellets of rain trickled outside, making the atmosphere more odd, to say the least. Welcome to HQ, Void said with a raise in his arms, giving an almost "are you not entertained" type of pose. Raising an eyebrow, Jaida slowly marched forward while looking at the mess of a room. An unkept couch in the center, a strange device for a TV, a messy kitchen space, and of course, the accompanied blue glow of a light. As Jaida continued forward, she couldn't help but say to herself, "What a dump." Hey, Pofnu. Void then said aloud as the small kitsune leapt from the couch once more and began circling around his legs. Whoa, is that a dog? Jaida asked as she focused upon the multi-tailed creature that Void picked up like a cat. Pofnu's lower body dangled down, while her upper half remained front with paws facing forward. Nope, magical fox as a matter of fact. She's been my only source of company for the past year or so, Void explained as he turned the fox to face Jaida. Pofnu's scrunched face tilted in curiosity at the guitarist, whose white eyes then dilated with a sudden surge of awe. Oh my god, she's adorable! Jaida exclaimed, vocalizing in a baby-talking tone. Hi, girl! She greeted, scratching the kitsune's head. Putting her back down, Void turned and began to make his way towards his quote-unquote supercomputer, while Jaida continued to pet and rub the fox's belly, that now laid upon the ground. So, this your base, or do you actually live like this? The musician promptly questioned whilst proceeding to pick up and rest Pofnu over her shoulder. After this, Jaida began to explore the room. It's both. like I said, it's my HQ. Apologies for the mess. I wasn't expecting visitors. Actually, scratch that. I never expected a visitor. Void replied as Jida walked over to a small closet on the right-hand side of the room. Curiously opening it, she was met with the sight of several oddities. Inside were multiple robotic bodies, some gray with large ball joints for limbs, and some others with strange wires that dangled down near the headpiece. Next to them were multiple sets of clothes, an old green jacket, blue and gray sweaters, as well as an orange scarf that Jida couldn't help but find fancy. At the bottom sat shoes, along with a blue hat sitting next to a bag of fake mustaches. Curiously, Jida leaned down and picked up this hat before placing it atop her head. Turning, she looked at Void, who had now booted up his computer system, and asked, "So, what's with all the weird stuff in your closet?" Glancing over his shoulder, Void looked at Jida and shrugged with annoyed eyes. "First off, it's rude to go through people's stuff. And 2, Comic-Con." The Spark elaborated before he went back to the system. "The hell's a Comic-Con?" Jida mumbled as she threw the hat back into the closet and approached the Spark. "It's a convention thing for nerds. I figure your world doesn't have it. I went there on a mission once." Void answered, slightly surprised. Rounding the couch, Jida watched as the Spark clicked upon a few buttons until she was suddenly startled by a large holographic map that just appeared from out of the blue. "Whoa!" she shouted, nearly stumbling on her rear. "Scare ya?" Void asked, looking over his shoulder. What? Nah, just wasn't expecting that." Jida returned, now walking up alongside the Spark. "So it scared ya?" Eyes furrowing down in an unamused gaze, Jida looked from Void and then back at the map, watching as strands of red lines appeared, creating a mess of zigzags and tangled lines. Void then rose his right hand and clicked on another sector of this map, creating an offshoot line of red to emerge, conflicting the strange layout even more. All Void could do was grumble out a sigh. "So what are we looking at here exactly?" Jida asked, eyes locked and focused upon the map. "You, my friend, are looking at a map of the multiverse. Well, the amount I've explored, that is." Void revealed as the red lines silently taunted him. "These lines and markers are every location and spot that I've encountered a glitch, or rather, where they had emerged." Void continued as he pointed towards the bullet point he had just created. "This little mark right here, this is your reality." Squinting, Jida examined the marker in awe, shocked as to just how tiny it was in the grand scheme of everything. "This is... wow," she quietly remarked, looking upon the rest of the map. "All this in 10 years? The musician then asked as she turned back to Void, who nodded with assurance. "This whole map thing came about 4 years into my mission. But, for the most part, this is a layout of every spot and location those monsters have touched. I made this whole thing to try and track them, but as you can see, it's all turned out to be a mess." The Spark explained, placing his hand upon his chin, gently scratching. "So, what exactly are you trying to track in regards to the glitch?" Jida questioned, examining the lines, unsure of what to make of it all. "Their source," Void answered. "You've seen their portals. They're coming from somewhere and somehow. What I'm trying to figure out is where they're coming from. Although we are worlds apart, every reality in some way, shape, and form is linked, even if it's by the smallest thread known to man." Void elaborated, making hand gestures towards the map. "Even though the glitch shouldn't exist, there's clearly an area within all of this that they're coming from. The layer beneath our own." Void finished while shaking his head low. "The problem, though, is that all these attacks, they're appearing at random places at random times. Unmatched patterns in ways that shouldn't even be possible. It's like their whole system is... glitched?" Jida finished, side-gazing upon Void. "Yeah, you put it best. Was that a pun?" Void asked. All Jida gave in response was a small shrug. Looking back at the map, Jida scanned her sight upon the red lines and swirling holographic worlds. Their lights glimmered off amber hues that almost made the musicians spin. Strange, she mumbled whilst petting Pofnu. It was then she got closer, squinting and looking not upon the lines themselves, but rather the bullet points that shimmered a brighter red. There was something different about them in her eyes, a strange sort of sense that seemed familiar. Wait, hang on a second. Jida blurted as she hunched herself over and looked at the map in more detail. What is it? Void asked, raising an eyebrow. Void, is there a way you could somehow turn off these lines? Jida asked, making the spark even more curious. Why do you ask? He returned as he made his way towards the control panel. I need to know that I'm not seeing things right now. With a confused stare, Void glanced from his newly acquainted ally and then towards his control panel. Reaching down, he clicked a few buttons, lowering the opacity in the lines, leaving the shiny bullet points to remain. Staring back at the two beings were what almost looked to be hundreds of tiny glowing eyes, all shimmering without as much of a blink. Glancing between each dot, Jida's mind began the race, while Void couldn't help but scratch his head, unsure of what the musician was thinking. Wait. Void, I think I may be onto something here. Is there a way you can flip the map in a vertical formation? Jida asked, looking at the spark. Flip the map? Alright. Turning a dial, Void promptly flipped the map around to face the other way, completely inverting all the bullet points and years of work on its head. For a long few moments, the two looked at the markers, Void trying to see what Jida was searching for, while she continued to theorize and evaluate within. Okay. Maybe I... Wait, holy shit! Jida suddenly cursed with an astonished look upon her face. What? What is it? Void asked in a startled voice as he quickly glanced from Jida and then to the map. Dude, look at this! Jida screeched as she reached out and pulled Void close. The spark gasped and stumbled at this before Jida promptly turned his head to face the screen. Look at the bullet points! Jida exclaimed, leaving Void both extremely curious yet confused. Squinting, the spark focused his vision upon each dot within each cluster around the multiverse, examining them with a keen eye. It was then Jida noticed that some spots in Void's head slightly began to glimmer blue. Sets of veins beneath his skin pulsated like a glowing light as he began to think hard. Until at last, he saw it. His oval eyes widened whilst he stood straight up, with his jaw ever so slightly hung agape. By Matira, he mumbled as Jida looked from him and then to the map. Void, these clusters, they're not a mess. They're constellations. Void finished as he slowly approached the map. Quickly reaching out, the spark began to rapidly connect the dots. Rather than connecting them all by a big trail, Void only connected the dots upon the select groups in each cluster. This in turn created many strange and odd shapes that mimicked the night skies in almost every world. Once done, the spark slowly stood back in utter awe and shock at what he was seeing. Each cluster had taken the shape of swirling patterns, with each seemingly pointing at something near in the middle. However, it was incomplete, but that didn't matter. This was something else entirely. The glitch weren't just attacking at random spots. No, they were emerging in select patterns in select locations. The most insane thing of note was that in the swirl of every constellation was the world that either had the bigger outbreaks, or rather, the worlds that were destroyed, Void's included. Placing a hand over his mouth, Void stumbled back into his couch, before throwing his arms up in complete and utter astonishment. Holy shit! He shouted, leaving Jida to turn with an amazed gaze. Jida, how did you... Void couldn't even finish asking the question. He was too flabbergasted to even muster words. After all these years, after all these errors, something had finally been found. I just sort of knew. You see, in my subspace field, when I warp, I see stars and constellations all the time. Jida explained, sitting down beside Void. I just recognize patterns when I see them, I guess. All those dots, they looked off, but when flipped, it became clear. Jida rationalized as she scratched the back of her head. You mean to tell me you can't solve a riddle, but can cipher and decode a map of the multiverse? Shrugging, Jida gave an awkward smile before the two of them looked back at the map. Look, Void, you're more knowledgeable on these things than I am. What do you make of it? The guitarist asked, leaving Void to think. Standing up and beginning to pace back and forth, both Jida and Pavnu watched as the gears began to turn in the Spark's head, his mind racing like an Indy car. It was then he stopped and looked to the map, his front half being cast in its low red glow, while his back being matched in the blue. The map is incomplete, but this is a start to figuring it all out. Turning, Void looked at Jida with a newfound face of confidence and a look of respect and admiration towards her. Listen, there's a reality off in the northern sector of the multiverse. It's a world where multiversal knowledge is prominent. I went there several times looking for answers, but I see now that I had been looking in the wrong spots. Jida, what you just uncovered is a multiversal constellation. Void revealed as he approached and kneeled down to her eye level. A multiversal constellation? She asked in return with a growing sense of excitement. Yeah, they're hard to come across in the vast sea of worlds because they can go in any which way. I had never considered that something like this would even be connected with the glitched. Void explained, shaking his head. Of course, they went about it in an upside-down fashion. They're beneath the layers, it makes sense. Void exclaimed as pieces began clicking. The only question that remains is, why and what does it mean? Void pondered, scratching his chin. Well, from what I'm seeing, the markers seem to be leaning or pointing towards something somewhere in the middle of all this. Maybe it is a map or a key of sorts. Jida contemplated as she tried to think herself. One question is answered, yet another takes its place. Void stated, standing back to his feet. Either way, this gives me hope that this will all be over sooner rather than later. If we can learn more about these constellation patterns, then perhaps they'll direct us in where we need to go. Jida, well done. Void nodded to the musician in approval before placing a hand upon her shoulder. Freezing for only a moment, Jida's astonished face quivered into a smile. She couldn't remember the last time anyone had thanked or respected her for using her abilities. It filled her heart with both joy and confidence. Thanks, Blue Eyes. Glad I could help. Standing firm, Void quickly aimed his blaster and fired towards the wall, opening another portal to where they needed to go. Turning back around, he extended his hand out, gesturing for Jida to take it. Come on, Freckles. We got a multiverse to save. Jida couldn't help but smirk in shock at the sudden nickname. She found herself instantly liking it. Raising her hand up, she firmly grasped Void's, now more than ready to embark on the journey of a lifetime.